But before, there we go. And I say, Snowden is with us. Before we jump into our guests for today, and guests or our instructors for today, rather, welcome back. I hope your week was grand. We've missed you. I hope you've missed us as well. And I hope we kept you busy with the homework. Trust me when I say that this is by far the simplest piece of homework that I'll be doing this month. So I hope you enjoyed it, because it's not going to get any simpler. And on that note, I will pull up some slides. Today, we're not going to play with anything fancy, slide-wise. Hope you don't mind. We may bring those back. By the way, did you like the way that those worked? Yeah, was it nice? Was it fun? I don't know.
It was nice and fun, yeah.
Yeah,
they
okay.
just pop up in a random location, don't they?
Yeah.
Like they don't know where you are, so they just pop up in them just over their face sometimes.
Yeah, good point. That's something they should add in the software. This is for Salim and Desi's context. We use Prezi Video as a new tool. Very cool. No, that's what I said. That's what I said. But I'll share it with you guys offline. And it was pretty. Yeah. Well, the class seems to think it wasn't too bad, but we're sticking to
But the nausea. The nausea.
Okay. Let's not give away your character too soon.
Yeah, exactly. One person at a time. So guys, welcome back. This is class 2. And today we're going to have an incredible class. We'll introduce our instructors later. But before we do that, we've got some 10 minutes. We know this already. And I think that the guys will talk through this because they set this as our standard. But Dee, you can help us regroup on where we are at, what we've done so far, and what we're doing today.
All right, so we covered session 1, the easiest session, but also I think an important one for everyone to level set on the scientist to founder journey as a whole, with the intro theme to the hats. And perhaps some of you have been thinking about this, the hats that you like, the hats that you are wearing today, and perhaps the hats that you'd like to wear in the future, or perhaps even at the end of the fellowship. We then introduce you to the concept of the minimum viable deck, which stems from Salim and Desi, who will be spending a bit of time on it today, and the power of network, which was also the exercise that we did in the evening. Has everyone managed to connect with everyone in the class on LinkedIn or Twitter? Thumbs up?
Yeah, I think so. I think most of them.
Well,
yeah, it was great to see. We had a few one-on-ones, and then as we were circling back on LinkedIn, suddenly we went from 0 to 21 shared connections. So it feels like brotherhood here.
Very good. Well, Ali's going to talk a bit more about the homework, spend a couple of minutes on it. But today we're going to kick off that journey from science to product by talking about perhaps the most pivotal piece, which is how do you communicate what you do, and what is this functional proposition, which is what we all are quite comfortable with as researchers, but how do we communicate our research in terms of value? I won't say more because we're going to be spending the rest of the afternoon doing that. And then we're going to have our after-hours session with 2 rock star science founders whose profiles I'm going to share right before they come on. And it's also going to be moderated by one of our fellow alums, who's also a founder now. So more on that later. Over to you, Ali.
After hours, so before we kick off with the core of the session today, we're just gonna put a couple of you on the spot because I've looked at the homework and I love them. So who wants to volunteer rather than me picking? To show
of hands. Let's do show of hands for who wants to volunteer.
You can start with me.
There we go.
I see Hanno.
Oh, Hanno. Where are you, Hanno? Oh, there you are.
You're on mute.
Okay. I'll pick it up from here. So if I remember right, Hano, I see it. And I'm opening, and I'll be sharing the screen in just a moment. If everything is right, it should be this one. Nice one. So guys, in case you haven't understood, can you all see this?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
This will be your master document, right? So every piece of homework will become a new slide or a new set of slides as we go through this. So the first piece of homework was the power of network, and we discussed of how to be in business, you need to understand people, and you need to surround yourself of relevant stakeholders. You're very much focused perhaps right now on the science stakeholders, and that is great, or the professors or the academics or the lab technicians that you could use. But we have to consider about who is going to invest in your company, who is going to help you with, well, who's going to become your client, and who has been doing this before you. So we're just going to open Hano's, and really we were asked to provide each of you 3 examples of each of these 3 categories. One is a founder that is doing something similar in a field similar to the business that you would like to launch. 3 investors that are relevant to your business or that have invested in a similar company. And then 3 corporates that are already clients of other similar companies, either similar startups or potential clients. So these are just examples, of course, Hano, and these are specific to what your expertise is and your area of research. But the great thing is that here we see in the first column, we see Indrek Turbo, self-diagnostic, and Marco. So that's a venture. We've got, oh, I know these guys as well. Eiko Sargent, yeah, Mart. And then Elizabeth Holmes. Yeah, that's a good one. Well done.
Maybe we can't quite categorize her as successful, I guess, in the end, but yeah.
Well, you're right. She's been successful at doing a few things, which is fundraising.
Yeah, exactly.
In no way we would like to promote that kind of science founder, but it's great. So the purpose of this is to see who is doing it before you, who has done it before you, so that you can see the good things that they're doing and the bad things that they're doing. So certainly leaving at 19 years old and starting a company, perhaps with no science validation, was not a good idea for her. So you're doing it right by not having left academia at 19 to start a biotech company so far. Well done, everybody. Investors, again, how did you get these names, Hannah?
I just Googled and I had some presentations from previous seminar which had some names which I went through, and it was actually pretty simple to find them. You Google European deep tech investors and they just pop up, for example. There's so many of them.
Exactly right. So they didn't used to exist so many. And deep tech investor is a very recent phenomenon. And there didn't used to be like a list or names of them. There are more coming through. So just in the since last week, I've seen at least 4 announcements of deep tech funds coming up. Now, deep tech and science may not be necessarily the same thing. So it's important to understand what level of, how deep can they go. But this is excellent. And also it may be that these funds have already invested in companies similar to the ones that you're looking to build. So that basically means that, well, on one hand, they may be conflicted, but actually most likely they may be able to understand very well your space. And so by that nature, they may be interested in investing in you because you may have a different take to the investment that they already have made. So the other company is not necessarily a direct competitor, but what that allows them to think is that you could be working together, or you could be solving a similar problem from different angles. And then we've got the corporates. Some of these names we know them very well: Thermo Fisher and Siemens and all that. And I'd imagine that these you already knew, Hanno, all of these names, or are these names that you had to research?
I looked them up again, but there wasn't any surprise, so to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably this is the easiest. We will find more and more corporates actually exposing themselves by starting their own funds and investing in innovation, or starting their own incubators, or having a person of relevance with to whom you can reach out and have a direct conversation. So the overall purpose, and I realize that we've got about 60 seconds before passing on to Dee and our instructors for the day. The purpose of this is that fundamentally this becomes the bedrock of a tracker that you can start building, a tracker where you start keeping tabs on relevant names. And this could be people in your same space, investors and corporates. Now, LinkedIn is a great way to keep track. You could also run specific trackers, especially for investors, and we all do it. We do it ourselves at Wilbe, because at Wilbe we have investors on top of us, and we can share a bit more about our own struggles, talking with our own set of investors. But it is important to know who the people are and what they're doing. So with that in mind, we will be sharing with you what is a template tracker. It's nothing technical at all, but that becomes, if you like, your black book, or call it whatever color you want. But in the industry, sometimes it's referred as a black book, and it's part of your assets. So cultivating that one and knowing when and how to deploy it is going to become your skill. So I'll stop this. Thank you, Hannah, for volunteering to share this. And over to Dee.
All right. Well, really, it's over to Salim and Desi. They'll be introducing themselves in all their glory, which they rightly should, because both of them are former founders, current founders, and exited founders and investors all in one. So they're really wearing all hats beyond just the hats we talked about last week. And they're also our co-conspirators of BSF when we launched last year. So they know it all. And we spent a lot of time thinking about how we can truly build a fellowship, a course that's tailored for scientists and not just for any others. And we have the benefit of running programs like this with 500 startups that some of you might have come across. So they've seen how it's done for general tech. And then we've worked with them to see how we can apply it for science. And with that, guys, over to you.
Hello.
Yay.
Hello.
Hello.
And apparently it's been renamed now. It's 500 Global.
Yep, rebranding. Salim, shall I share the slides from my screen?
I think you should. That would be good.
I am on it.
You're a very sharing person, Des.
I am very sharing.
Debatable whether you're caring.
Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Excellent. I'm hearing lots of thumbs up.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you guys over here. Great. Okay. Salim, do you want to talk about this?
Are we not doing intros?
They come here. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, of course. Sorry. I'll go back. Sorry. Apologies. Let's go back. Last slide, please. We're going to do this like I'm going to pretend to be Chris Whitty. Forgive me. Hello. I'm okay, fine. So the whole point of the minimum viable deck, it comes from years of experience. And it comes from, can I control your screen? Oh yeah, it's me. Oh, sorry. I'm controlling your screen without realizing. Oops. I'm not very good with technology, which makes me an excellent investor. I just want to be absolutely clear. So, right, hang on. Why can't I make this work? Sorry, I just want to see your faces. That's better. I can now see your wonderful faces. And this all makes sense. So, the whole point of the minimum viable deck is I have had to go through more pitch decks than you've had hot breakfasts, hot dinners, and hot lunches. And all that food aside, all those pitch decks I've gone through, most of which are rubbish. None of them get to the point. And to be quite frank and honest, you're a bunch of scientists. If you can't do something concisely and to the point, you're clearly writing a paper for publication and you need to fill it with waffle. And that's the exact opposite of this. You guys are very good naturally at concision. So the whole idea of this is, how do we get to the most concise deck that gets it across? And there's only 4 things that a deck needs to do. You need to be able to explain. People say what you do. What that actually means is, do you have a decent proposition? And that's what I'm gonna be talking about for most of the next hour. Des will go on to expand it as to how to make it actually snappy and sayable. So I'm going to help you with the research. Des is going to help you with the output. The other 3 bits are who you do it for. And one of the whole problems that most founders have, and scientists have even worse, is it's for everybody, it's for the world. And that doesn't really work, because you can't do the world overnight, no matter how much money you have. Why now? And it's got to be not about you, it's all about the market, all about the customer. And also lastly, why you guys? Because one of the biggest things that in this room is all of you, well done, you have been to fancy universities, you've got fancy degrees, great. That has very little correlation to your startup success. Sad, but true. The reality is, if you're going to be successful in a startup, your intelligence will help, but it's actually how you work with the teams that you go through. And you're actually there to me going, Salim, isn't this just the same thing as what makes a successful research team? Ta-da! Exactly. Building a startup, building a research team, similar potatoes. And so that's basically the idea behind the minimum viable deck. Any questions, feel free to unmute, stop us at any time, interject, have a fight with us. We're absolutely fine with it. Davika has banned me talking about vaccines, which is apparently because I get quite passionate about sort of global access to vaccines. Anyway, moving swiftly on, brief intro. Next slide, please, Des.
Can you not do it?
Can I? Hey, was that me? Was that you?
I think that was me. I'll do it. You can be Chris Whitty in this relationship.
What does that make you, Des?
The slides switcher.
That makes you Boris.
Oh,
that makes you Boris. Oh dear, oh dear. Anyway, so we are the anti-deck of startup education. Not our name. We didn't come up with it, but somebody else did, so we're sticking with it. Not sure which one has the drug problem, but you'll be able to work that out after you've dealt with this for a couple of hours. The reason we do it is because we've done it. We've put our own cash into it. We've screwed up way more times than we've succeeded, and we've had to deal with a lot of junk. Don't ask us how to scale a company beyond like 5 or 10%. We have no idea. And full warning, the jokes are terrible and we swear a lot. Sorry. We'll try avoid swearing. It's a disease. It's like, so, but the jokes are worse, honestly. So this is me. I'm not even going to start, I can't do this, because I just sound like, I hate talking about myself. Only fun things I do, I stick needles in people. I've vaccinated over 5,000 people, and continue to do so. Stuff that's relevant to you guys for this. At 500 Startups, world's largest fund, worked across 60 something plus countries. And so I've just seen all sorts in every way, shape and form of startup, from deep tech all the way to dog borrowing services. I kid you not, that is a startup we did. Borrow my doggy, it's awesome. Most of my experience comes, I'm a scientist by academic, from my studies, but none of you will respect me as a scientist because I'm a psychologist. No, nobody's laughing at that. Well, it's fine. I realize we're not really, nobody here considers me a real scientist. Des, do you want to do an intro to yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I am a comps geek, a real geek. I guess that makes me the real scientist in this group. I was at Cambridge, I was at Corpus, and then I went on to build a bunch of different apps as a software developer. I then started my own company called Story Terrace, and we make books, biographies for family members, so for your parents or grandparents. And we have a network of vetted writers from all over the world to get down life stories to pass on to future generations. That company is still going, but I've stepped away from it now, and I've been mentoring and doing these kind of accelerator programs for a few years now, thanks to Salim roping me in on this. And I've seen under the hood of now over probably 150 companies from the Middle East to the Midwest in America, which has been really fun and really interesting. And one of the things that I will say is I wish I had the future me when I was the younger me to help prod me in the right direction, because I've made a lot of mistakes that could have probably been saved if I just asked a simple question of like, hey, why are we doing that? Or what should we do here? So yeah.
And because we want to is a terrible idea, is a terrible response. But sadly, is the usual response. And I'm going to be telling you all off in the really fun bits, which are the one-on-ones after this, that you can't do what you really want to do. So yes, those of you who are old enough, there was a Billy Piper record about this. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Okay, right. So we've explained the whole thing is that one of the reasons we're doing this is personally I get pissed off a lot at all these, oh yes, you've got some great science, go talk to an MBA, get an MBA involved, and an MBA has no clue about what it is. And the reality is that the scientists themselves should be building the businesses and using MBAs as minions, not the other way around. That is really what fundamentally in the entrepreneurship world we're starting to see. The fundamental thing of the tech-led CEO is the one that's actually winning out, with the MBAs used to support, not the MBAs used to found. So nothing wrong with MBAs, they're great people, sorry Davika. But the point being is that from a founding point of view, my personal experience is that the returns are much better when it's actually the practitioner who's actually doing it. In this case, in most cases, it's scientists or engineers. We're sick of seeing people being investors' playthings. That's not how it should be, and you should be in control. And we're also impact-first founders. We generally don't put money into anything that doesn't really make a difference in some way, shape, or form. For those of you who are going to ask me why on earth did a dog borrowing company make that for, if you look at mental health and well-being, dog borrowing probably has a bigger impact than any mindfulness app that you could ever imagine. So moving swiftly on from that. Next slide, please. So how do you get a good business? Really, really simple. 4 things. 1, a focused proposition that brings people together. If you can't talk about it and it doesn't bring people, and it's not like Khalees's milkshake, then there's something going on that's wrong. You need to be able to talk about it, and it brings like-minded people together who are like, oh my God, that's such a cool thing. And the way you say it and how you say that has to have that impact. You as a founder have to have super deep empathy with the end user. And yes, don't care how abstract a physicist you are, that doesn't mean you're exempted from that. And odds are you actually probably have deeper empathy than you think. Ideally, some sort of inflection point, i.e. the world is changing, people are doing things in a slightly different way. And lastly, it's not the quality of the wall that matters, it's how well it is knitted. So the reality is that you can have the finest quality yarn, but if it's not knitted well, it makes a terrible jumper. Does that make any sense?
So I've got a good example of this that most scientists, I think, can relate to. If you've ever been working on kind of a group project in the lab and you've had a team where you love working together, you stay in the lab till the early hours, like you enjoy each other's company, you solve problems, you keep making progress, and you're sort of excited to get to work the next day. Has anyone, hands up if you've had that experience with a good team? Okay, not everyone. Okay, no, everyone's had it. Okay, great. And then the opposite of that is when you have a team where you kind of don't really want to spend time with them because they rub you up the wrong way and they say stuff that's really annoying, and like you just don't work well together, and you want to get out of the lab as early as possible. Has anyone had that experience? Okay, most people. Okay, what we found in startups as well as research teams is the ones who get on well together and stay in the lab till 1 a.m, that are obviously they do significantly better. than the ones who may be better academically on paper, but leave early and don't actually get the work done.
You mean what, like, Desi? You mean like getting somebody to come out to the middle of a desert where they can't go out or do anything for 6 weeks and they still enjoyed themselves?
Exactly, yes. Thanks for that, Salah.
I did that actually. I dragged him out to the desert for 6 weeks. Anyway, moving swiftly on.
Cool. On to this.
Right, let's talk about indecent propositions. So, the one thing I always found about this group is that it's such a mix of ages. So, what we want to do is get rid of the grey areas. Obviously, most of us have a few grey hairs. That's not what we're talking about. And you have plenty of grey matter, which we can eliminate at the pub at some point when we meet in some way, shape, or form. But what we're talking about here in the proposition is when you talk about it, just being very unambiguous. So the whole challenge that most startups do is that they talk about everything in grandiose terms. Oh my God, we're going to take over the world. My new genetic switch will change the way that, the world is I don't know, grows plants, or will change the way the world eats meat. Maybe you will. But at the early stages, sometimes it's too much to grasp ahead of, and being too over the top just scares people, because it's like, yeah, that's great one day. And so it's also about, how do I get something realistic but exciting? So next slide, please, Des. And so the whole idea of Indecent Proposal, is anybody old enough to remember this film? Ale? Nobody else? Okay, just Ale. Oh, right. A couple more, fine. Anyway, so the whole point of this film was, back in 1993, obviously things were a little more controversial back then. The world couldn't handle, actually, kids' TV now is is more provocative than 1993 mass film, but it had it was kind of thing. It's like the film just had a strap line. And this is in the day and age before trailers were easily visible. It was just literally a poster that said, "Indecent proposal. A stranger's offer of $1 million for the wife to spend the night with him." And what was really good about this is it conjured up imaginations, but it was clear to understand what this film was about. Straight off. One line, explained it all, got the intrigue, but got the understanding at the same time. Does that make sense? Yes, no, sorry. I'm struggling with seeing everybody today. I don't think Zoom likes me very much. That's much better. I can see a lot more of you now. I like this. I like seeing lots of you. Good, fine. But it all makes sense, right? It was exciting. It got you in. You're like, woo, right? Cool, awesome. Next slide, please, Des.
Yes, so this is essentially, who knows actually what the rover on the left is? Does anyone remember this? This now feels like a long time ago in these days. You can either type in the chat. Sorry?
Like a year ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. I've lost all track of time in this pandemic. Does anyone want to write in the chat if they know what this is?
Or just unmute and talk. We're absolutely fine with that.
Easy.
Much easier than chatting. Curiosity. Curiosity, never let me go.
Was it curiosity or was it perseverance? Now I'm confused.
It was a long time ago, then perseverance, most probably.
Okay, regardless, this whole project of getting a rover on Mars with a drone that flies around and drops it off, which is all really, really cool, is like a great idea to have, but probably from where you guys are, you're not going to be achieving this next week or next month or even next year. However, you might be like the guy on the right who is from the factory that made the parachute that works on Mars. So the point of this is think in smaller chunks of what can you achieve as kind of your first product before reaching Mars. Another example is SpaceX. They want to terraform Mars and go live on it. There's lots of Mars examples in here, but to start with, landing reusable rockets is like the first step. So we love grand visions, but we also love what is a realistic first step for you to have.
And one thing we find is that there's a huge difference between core tech and end tech. And so almost everything you read or see or hear about for startups is all about end tech. And I'm talking about companies that basically put a bunch of components together and then market it. And that's 90% of businesses, let's be absolutely clear. Even Apple, yes, they do a bit of their own research, but what does Apple really do? It gets a bunch of components from a bunch of third parties, solders them up on a board, sticks it in a flashy box, and then writes some ridiculously good software, and we all end up giving them all our money. No? Or is it just me?
I do as well. Yeah. No.
The rest of you are like, nah, we're scientists. We use open source ecosystems. We're like, yes, fair enough. We're lazy. But what's interesting is that's just a much simpler challenge, if that makes sense. And it's all about the value proposition at that stage. What value do you offer to the end of the customer? Whereas for most of you, you have much higher barriers to entry. It's hard to build a chip. It's hard to build a fabrication factory. Those of you in life sciences, getting whatever you've got reliably tested in the wild is surprisingly difficult, as I'm sure you're aware. And so the challenge, typically, people talk about it from the functional proposition, what it does. So we think of companies like BioNTech or ARM or whatever. It's very much what does it functionally do rather than the value prop which the company is focused on. And typically, you're not taking that product to market yourself. 9 out of 10 times, there'll be an intermediary that helps. Even if that's not going to be the case in the long term, it's still worth thinking about it at the early stage, because it's often too much of a leap for other people to understand how you're going to get to market quickly if you're going to do it all end to end. Now, what I want to be clear on is that here's the problem with pitching. The value proposition is always what gets people excited and gets investors to put the money in, even gets the people involved excited. People who worked on things like mRNA vaccines, etc., they weren't excited just about the science. They were excited about the implications of the science, the value prop of more rapidly developed drugs. Does this make sense? And so it's important to understand.
Just one question here, sorry if I can interject.
Please, of course.
Mainly based on the example that you give there with the core IP tech and say BioNTech, for example, and why do you call the customer as an intermediary? Is it not the end user?
So the customer typically is typically an intermediary for most of these organizations. So BioNTech so in actual case, BioNTech's a great example. They lack them at the early stages, they lack the manufacturing capability to actually build and distribute.
Yeah.
So that's why the alliance with Pfizer was done, so it could spit out. And even before that, all its other prior stuff, it did a very small bit of manufacturing in-house. Only now, as a more established company, can they build the end-to-end product.
But why is the customer an intermediary here?
Because
the end user. That's the point. For BioNTech, I would be the end user as the one who's taking the vaccine, for example.
Correct. So, but the problem is BioNTech don't sell to you. So here in the UK, BioNTech would have done a deal with Pfizer for manufacture, which the United Kingdom government would have bought from Pfizer, which was then supplied to the National Health Service, which was then put in my hand to stick into somebody's arm. And so the reality is the customer is who's paying for it. And the first people that would pay for it from BioNTech would actually be Pfizer, or in that case, the intermediary would be the National Health Service in the UK.
Okay, understood.
Make sense? But it's important to understand that, but at the same time, like the value prop, you can't get away with only looking after the functional prop and the intermediary. It's much harder in core tech, which is what you guys are, or deep tech, or whatever you want to call it, because you have to be aware of both in your narratives and your statements, and learning when to talk about which level of customer and how to describe it is difficult at the early stage. But don't worry, Desi and I will spend time and help you work on that, won't we, Des?
Exactly. We've done this many times.
We have. Next slide, please. Pascal.
Yes, can I also ask a question? Is this the whole proposition? Is this about talking to investors or to customers? Because I guess there's a big difference, isn't there? Or should it be the same? Should I be able to pitch the same thing to both groups?
At its core, yes, you should be able to present the same things, but investors and customers will ask different questions. So in an ideal world, you have one statement, which is, you will eventually end up with different statements for every audience. There's no doubt about it. But if we can start off with a good core that's malleable, we then end up being able to get to good, if that makes sense. So the reality is that the core elements of the good, but how you phrase it will change. That's a really good question. Appreciate that. Thank you. Cool. So the downside of this is that the distance between function and value for end tech and core IP is much bigger. And so it makes it harder to explain. And so but the problem is that most of you are taught, most of the books say, there's just going to be some magic wand that comes in and it goes, functional proposition, magic creates value. The problem is that doesn't really show, as a founder, your empathy and understanding of how your technology value is created from, if that makes sense. So there is no magic cloud in the middle to money, because we see a lot of things as like build product, ... cloud, $1 billion valuation. Does that make sense? Like, I see it all the time, and it's just not how it works. The reality is you'll have an intermediate and compound product, which, and you'll go through before you get to the true end product. And so let's go back to BioNTech as a simple example. They had the core platform, which they built, but then they had lots of intermediate samples, tests, etc. along the way before they get to a fully operational platform that can be used in the rapid pace that it was in the pandemic. And the thing is, you're going to end up with different waves of product. And equally, there'll be different sophistications, different focuses, and often they may be completely different. In the same way that, let's keep using BioNTech as an example. We all know they were trying to do cancer treatments rather than vaccines at the beginning. And so it's this element of the product will change and morph over time. And that's fine. And that's good. And you need to accept that now. One of the challenges we see is people try to go straight to the end product and the value proposition, the end value proposition, when they're still working out what the core tech is and what the first wave product is. Any good investor will be able to see from the first product, they should be able to guess at what the second wave could be. They're the ones who are going to give you cash. The ones who need to be told what the second wave or third wave opportunity is, they're less likely to give you cash because they're not able to understand the actual potential. That's my experience anyway. Your mileage may vary. And obviously the audiences also change for each product. Is that all clear? Yep. In short, what you start off with now is not what you're going to end up with. Accept it and embrace it. You'll go through different ways. You'll go through changes. Just as the music taste you had when you were 10 is different to what you had now. And you probably went through an emo phase and a Taylor Swift phase. I still haven't grown out of my Taylor Swift phase. Moving swiftly on. You'll do things for different audiences. And this comes to Pascal's question. There are probably 6 different propositions you're going to have to be able to explain. The functional prop, what it does. The value prop, the benefit. The investor prop, how I get money out of it. The consumer prop, why I as a consumer benefit from it. Not necessarily the same as the value conferred. The talent prop, what makes people excited to work at your startup. The research proposition, what makes people excited, what makes the research that you do that empowers your company exciting. So many propositions, so little time. Don't worry about anything other than function and value for the moment. Right, so we're actually going to do this. We're going to build a functional prop, work out what our functional prop and our value prop is. So what you actually do on one side, what people buy into on the other. What would be awesome is, Des, are you able to share the workbook?
Not directly in here. Maybe Vika has it, and do you have it up?
No, the one we did for the session. Hang on, let me try. It's in your WhatsApp, but remember the one I sent you errantly in the morning?
Yes.
I'll keep talking through this while you get that out. So the whole thing about the value prop stuff is that, come on. So when we think of propositions like ARM, everybody thinks, what does it do?
Did we lose Salim?
What
Me?
happened?
Or he's frozen perfectly.
Frozen in perfect time. What is it? Everyone's heard of ARM. What does ARM do? And I said, there he's back.
Oh, so no idea. My Wi-Fi just cut out, and my internet connection is like my sanity, unstable. Perfect. So, everybody knows what ARM does, yes or no? Hands up if you don't know who ARM are. It's fine if you don't. Okay, cool. You don't. You do or you don't?
Don't.
Don't. Okay, perfect. ARM is the company that engineers the designs of the chips that are in pretty much every mobile phone and even the laptop that I'm using right now. It's a Cambridge, England-based company. They basically design, they interestingly design but not make chips. They license the essential design of a chip so a manufacturer can go and make them. So Apple makes the ARM chip, licensing the architecture. For those of you who are computer nerds or not, the reason why people like them and why they are, so for those who aren't computer nerds, the reason why they're good is that they use a simpler way of operating, RISC versus CISC, reduced commands rather than complex commands, which means they do fewer things but faster. The net outcome of this means you end up with a processor on a mobile phone that doesn't run out of battery after 10 minutes. If you put a normal desktop computer chip into a laptop, into a mobile phone, you think the 1 day battery life is bad on your iPhone? It'd be about 10-15 minutes. And so that was ARM's functional prop. But that's all well and good. But if you're explaining it and communicating to it, like, yes, I've got a lower power, faster throughput processor, it's not going to get anybody excited. And so you have to think about the applications. Well, if I have lower power, it means it makes mobile computing work. The batteries actually last long enough in a small device. It makes it easier. The whole thing is it's easier to integrate because of the with the manufacturing thing, because of the way it's licensed. And ultimately, it ends up with cheaper to buy computing devices, mostly because they don't need as many batteries, they don't need as cooling engineering. You can build simpler devices. So if it wasn't for, so basically ARM's main proposition is not actually the last two. It's just, yeah, we make mobile computing work. Without us, you wouldn't have a mobile phone that could actually do all the stuff you wanted and not die of terrible battery life. Does that make sense? Right, let's go do another. Desi. Oh no, Devika, you're going to do BioNTech.
I mean, we've actually already talked a bit about this, and I think everyone's familiar with BioNTech. Does anyone want to take a shot at describing, before you bring the animation up, what does BioNTech do? No one?
Oh, come on. Who here's in the life sciences department? Where's the lady
was vaccines.
pipetting into her own proprietary
mRNA vaccines for the corona stuff.
Interesting. mRNA vaccines for COVID. All right.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
They are doing actually protein expression from mRNA systems, so they have to optimize mRNA sequence to stand in the cells. Actually, they optimize the mRNA sequences. That's what they do.
Absolutely. If I was to pick on Rhinus, that would be a very apt way of describing functionally what BioNTech does. They're optimizing protein expression in order to then produce a good pipeline of mRNA-based medicines, whether that's vaccines or not. But it's interesting, Irene, what you did mention, which we'll come to in a second. Anyone else? Any other scientific explanations of what BioNTech does? Or we're happy with what Rainer said?
They also optimize the RNA so that the immune system will not target the RNA.
There we go. There, all the good stuff is coming out. Nice one. Salim, if we show the functional prop. So I think there's some of this. In fact, if anything, this is even higher level. But Rhinus, what you said, and Gangu, what you said, probably describes better what exactly their research is based on, which is how they're actually producing their pipeline of medicines or immunotherapies. And we got one from Zando's, no, rather from Wikipedia. Thank you for that. What about the value proposition? How would you, as customers, or actually as people a lot of us have taken the BioNTech Pfizer vaccine, but even generally as scientists who might have come across the company, what would you say the value proposition of BioNTech is?
You can produce loads of this.
It's about saving lives and rendering treatments.
Very nice. Very nice. It's about, and then Gangu, you mentioned about producing loads and loads of it. Is that about vaccine, being able to produce vaccine?
Yes, because normal vaccine need to grow the cells or culture the cells. It's not that fast, but for this mRNA vaccine, you can easily scale it up so that loads of customers can buy it and have access to it.
I think it's a matter of compatibility and effectiveness. I mean, I would be most probably psychologically better off taking one shot instead of having to take 3 shots. It was I'm coming from a completely non-life science background. And so I speak like a guy who was saying, okay, if I had an option between 3 vaccines, which one would I choose? The other thing is, I think, compatibility. I think it's a big issue with how the vaccine's been, distributed all across the world. It wouldn't be something that was easily available as an option for guys back in India if you were saying this is something that has to be stored at -70. I'm like, okay, good, it works, one shot. How many people are there, or how many countries are there with an infrastructure that can support this? So it's not a question of, I mean, I might be able to scale up and say I can vaccinate the world produce enough doses to vaccinate the world in 6 months. Can you actually do it? No.
Fellows, I got a good value proposition for end users. They offer freedom. They offer freedom to live.
Yes, spot on. That's what I would say about a lot of these things. Is the value is we get back to normal. Come on, that's much more appealing than, I get these mRNA things. I don't even know exactly what you were talking about before, to be completely honest. But like, they sound great, but what does that mean to me? If it means that me and my friends and family can get back to normality, I'm sold.
Desi, hug Desi.
We have actually hugged in real life.
We have hugged post-pandemic in a few weeks, yes.
Absolutely, and I think Chandan and Rhinus, you both hit on that, saving people's lives and freedom. And if you actually, some of the value propositions out here that we've got up don't even cover that. So well done, guys, on bringing those up. I guess solving the COVID-19 pandemic is probably it. But one thing which Salim alluded to before COVID-19, I think everyone has described the value of BioNTech in terms of COVID-19. But before the pandemic, BioNTech was doing nothing related to COVID-19. Their value proposition was, we've got this, technology, this platform of mRNA combined with, yada, yada, yada that they're doing. And we're going to produce the next generation of immunotherapies. But it was nothing. That still got people excited. They got funding. But boy, has that story changed completely post-COVID, which, to Salim's point, things pivot and things move.
But on that point, actually, they were always very ahead of other things, because they were the first few to venture into personalized cancer treatment and make compatible treatments to the patient, right? Like you choose one-to-one, you make permutation combinations. So they were always ahead of times. And now that we are talking about COVID, it has actually pushed them further up. So
Yeah.
What's
Very
interesting about that? So what's interesting about that is that, and I bring this up. If you remember, they were laughed out of the University of Pennsylvania. They were told they had an idiotic thing that would never work. Only a fool would be silly to look at, mRNA-based immunological treatments and stuff. And so they did, and they went and got private funding, and they did it that way. And the world is definitely a better place because of it. And so the reason I also bring that up is, if you're doing something good, that often will be the response. It's very rare that things win the academic consensus and also end up being super world changing. There is a whole thing within entrepreneurship, and it also affects the academic community much more grossly, which is there's too much essentially, how can I say, peer influence and groupthink, inverted commas. And it's an outmoded term, but that is one of the things that I think is always quite interesting to be able to get through, to deal with and challenge with when you are pitching and working.
Can I comment on that as well?
Please, yeah.
So you must have read in the news that they did not get the Nobel Prize for the vaccine yet, obviously because they were not the first ones. They did not design or discover the technology. They used a pre-existing technology. That's why the credit solely doesn't go to BioNTech. It was, I think, in 1990s already established by a smaller group. That's why they were laughed about, because they were the users. They were translating the technology into a viable product.
And that also brings a really valuable point, right? Value is not just created. Value is often undervalued by its creator. It takes different teams, different peoples. And that's what we talk about: the first wave, the second wave, and the third wave, and the fourth wave. What we don't tell you is, as investors, half the time we're looking at, just get the first wave through. And even though you're probably not the right person to take to second or third or fourth, we can just get someone else in. Larry and Sergey did it at Google. Mark Zuckerberg did it at Facebook. He was CEO, but let's be honest, Sheryl Sandberg grew the business, right? So, let's, call a spade. But that's a really great point, Chandan. Thank you so much for raising that.
There is another very interesting point with Pfizer, especially from the view of Pfizer, actually. Pfizer bought this mRNA platform because many of the companies were starting to buy mRNA platforms. And nobody actually knew very well when and how actually these mRNA platforms become profitable. Because if you're a Pfizer, then you want to earn profit more or less. Actually, Pfizer initially developed the platform toward the influenza A and B vaccine. And that was already on the stage of clinical trials and validation when the COVID broke in. So actually for Pfizer also, it was very, very big coincidence that they had developed it toward the vaccine platform. And that was because of the pragmatical view inside the big corporations. That means that you certainly have to present results in a means of viable economic product to the stakeholders meetings, that you don't take in very, very difficult projects where you can't actually propose nothing useful within 20 years.
I mean, and I think you've hit the nail on the head. The product goes, you're amplifying the point around the product definitely goes, there's a first wave, second wave, third wave, and fourth wave of a product. Half the time, you can have a guess, but you don't actually know. But it's okay. Because what you're talking about there is something that's really powerful, which is intellectual elasticity, not being stuck or stubborn with just because I've spent 15 years trying to solve this. And then in year 16, you realize, oh, wait, I could do something else. Actually moving to the something else with it rather than sticking with it. So really good point. Right, we're running short of time. Des, do you want to do 23andMe or should we?
Yes.
Should we
I'll run through this quickly because I think this is quite a nice example. So just functionally what 23andMe does is, does everybody know 23andMe? What they do? They do like at-home DNA testing. They've got huge data sets. They sell a lot of that data.
They do at-home DNA data banking for the future profit of big American pharma. But carry on, sorry.
Yes, I'm not as cynical, at least not in a first meeting with a group of people as you. But okay, who's actually done this? And does anyone want to tell me why you did it?
Or any DNA test for that
it
matter.
doesn't need to be 23andMe.
You've done Prenetics or something like that.
Erin, do you want to?
Yeah, for us actually in Estonia, there has been other project that we are genotyping Estonians DNA. It's really big project here. So I have heard that my friends have used actually this 23andMe. And the idea is that you can use it for personalized medicine, or you can know if you have some genes, for example, if you have BRCA4, that is the breast cancer, or if you have some other genes that is for cancer or something else. So this 23andMe, I am super happy that in Estonia we are having really big this project that has now again collecting the Estonians data, and I think it will be like the most genotype DNA country probably in the world.
Great.
I think
That's
Iceland
really cool.
currently holds that mantle, but it's good to see Estonia coming after it.
Did anybody else do this for a different reason other than sort of finding out medical potential in your family history? Was anyone just
a dog?
Yeah, I know they do it because of the inheritance. Maybe people want to know from where they're coming from.
Yes, like curiosity of like, where's my family from? What I always hear is, oh, I'm 1%, I an African, 2% Polish, 5% right. Like that's kind of like the curiosity of where you're coming from. And so, yeah, there's a curiosity, warning signs for disease. No one here mentioned, but I've heard this quite a bit, that people want like this action to be a sort of kickstart to get fitter, which is quite nice. But if you look at the functional thing of what 23andMe does, it's very, very different from the actual value that the end user is getting. And that's the point of this exercise, is to understand that.
If I can comment, and actually I wouldn't see it's very different. It's more just like big science behind it, but now just let the regular people to consume it, because it's also get to know what allergies do you have, if you have some genes to be specifically good in some kind of sport activities. In my opinion, they just, it's all over the world now coming up these type of startups.
Yeah, just off topic. Remember when the DNA synthesis became available online, you could order a 1,000 base pair DNA piece in the tube to your home. Then there was a major concern from US, I don't remember, was it FBI or something? They published that, okay, now everybody can order a Ebola virus.
And I know other concern, what was that? Okay, oh, my child has a gene for to become a great singer. Maybe now I should put only her to go to, I don't know, singing school. But oh my God, my daughter wanna become a runner. Oh no, what I will do now? So I know that there's other ethical questions behind that as well.
Yeah, then you can buy a ballistic gene gun, so you can change the genes.
In putting this into a question, I guess, well, you obviously focus on the positive value proposition, but is it then the role of the investors or customers to ask about the negative impact and figure that out by themselves, and then I just need a good response to that?
No, I say Desi and I probably disagree on this. I'm very, very much in the line, not disagree, we don't disagree, we actually agree on this.
That's not true. That's not true. Sorry, go on.
So we both have very different views on genetic testing. So I'm going to get my dog genetically tested, but I'm not going to ever do it myself. The point I'm being is coming from this. The reality is, whenever you start doing anything around healthcare or human life or anything, it's very normal that there will be issues and ramifications and things that you have to address and challenge. The notion that you just have to go and talk about the positives and let other people deal with the negatives is totally and utterly wrong. Genetic testing is, like, it's fine, it's great, but even 23andMe will tell you right from the get-go. And even the people that looked at it early on were like, look, we're going to get these concerns. We're going to have to build the safeguards in now and as early as possible. And I will say this for 23andMe, they're not far from perfect, and the whole idea of being able to anonymize human DNA just seems preposterous, given it's, fundamentally, each human has unique DNA, a unique DNA pattern. But either way, the point is they did try and address it and they did tackle it. And I would say, like, 23andMe is struggling between a barrier, and they, at least by addressing it and dealing with it up front, they're actually able to increase the value of what they're doing. Because if they just gone ahead and did it and didn't care, the problem is that they wouldn't have the brand trust, the appeal, and in fact, the confidence in the investment dollars. So I will actually argue that, like, genetic sequencing is now cheap, easily affordable. It's not a problem. It's just super common. Back when I was an undergrad, it took like, 6 months? They were taking 6 months or something like that to do a human, or 6 weeks. I don't know. I can't remember. Now it's a matter of minutes, The actual ethical stuff, 100%. Build it in, build it up front. Talk about the framework up front. Anybody who doesn't, the problem is this isn't me going, I care about the world and let's be fluffy. It's just a business concern, right? Unless you have the ethical regulatory framework in place, nobody's going to actually trust you. And if they don't trust you, you'll never get the cash, either from the customer or the client or the partners you work with. If they see you as nothing more than, like Enron or a Goldman Sachs investment banker, or the stereotypes of them, nobody's going to trust you with the cash.
Good thing we're in Europe, most of us, and it's a visionary regulator, the European Union. So hopefully the region is right to develop research in this and other areas. Where are we going?
Photogenics very quickly, and then because we need to take a break soon.
Oh yeah, well, photogenics, we can actually save it as an example for the homework if we're tight on time.
Yeah, so what we'll do is, let me see, where are we at now? Come on.
You can't do it? Where would you like me to go to?
We're not going to do Tesla. We don't need to do Tesla. Everybody gets it. So the last thing we do before we go is, we all know, so the reason the only reason we ever use the Tesla example, look, is that the whole thing with the Tesla is, yes, it's great, but there's only one real reason why people buy it, which is, I'm better than others. I'm doing something, but I'm better than others by doing something for the rest of the planet. There's the savior complex that comes in with buying a Tesla. There's an ego, identity, status. Most people who buy Teslas it's not really about the environment. It really bloody isn't. If we all were going for the most environmentally friendly life cycle vehicle, we'd be buying old secondhand Jeep Wranglers. For those of you who don't know, I can talk about that at a longer pace. Reality is, identity and most goods, even if they're scientific, are positional, if that makes sense, right?
I find it very interesting that you do that. I don't know if we can spend 5 more minutes here on this, because you say identity and status. If you look at a Tesla Model S in Europe, I don't know what the price is in the US. In Germany, for example, I find it really silly if people buying Tesla Model S for an identity as a status, because for the same price, I don't believe people go on that. Maybe I put it the wrong way. You get a Mercedes S-Class, which is fully loaded, which is a status symbol. So I think it's more a demography point of view where people are saying...
No, so I'm just going to cut you off on that one. So that's actually really, really simple. The reality is that if you look at the actual sales in the United States, the Model S outsells the S-Class. In the UK, I believe it's the same. I'm not sure about Germany. The reality is Tesla has created a premium brand that aspires to people that would never look at a Mercedes. In fact, it goes across all of them. In fact, it gets people who'd never owned cars to want to own cars. So in my community, in the tech community, there is only one car to drive. If you're not driving a Tesla, who the hell are you?
Yeah, okay, fine. I mean, I'm talking from purely German point of view because I can't speak for the US because I don't know anything about it.
Even
Never
then in
been there.
Germany, the land where Teslas are going to be built, right?
Yeah,
There's still
exactly.
kind of like, there's still wide, like there's still either way, there's still, even if it's not a Mercedes S-Class, right? It's still a high prized identity. And it's very well, the whole thing about it is people buy Teslas because the reality is that the nana value is high. And right now, a Tesla is more novel than any car with an internal combustion engine.
So,
If that makes sense.
yeah, well, yeah, okay, but
And most Tesla owners usually have also Volkswagen, BMW, or Audi in their garage.
This is something I'm learning. But yeah, I mean, like the Tesla owner brigade are the top four. They typically have switched from the top four, top five materials. So the point is that certainly within different communities, certainly in mine, in the tech and the engineering and the scientific community, from what I can see, the Tesla is the premium brand because it's got the nana factor. And adding to that, like with a Mercedes or whatever, everybody who's rich already has a Mercedes. Let's be quite frank and honest. And so there's no. Oh, well done. I had an S-Class. I got an S-Class again. Great. If that makes sense, right? It's this whole different thing. I mean, like, and coming back to coming back to why it's important for you as startups to understand is very little of what we do or say are actually crops of value. Almost everything is positional. Even basic things have become positional. Like, those of you in England, who here shops at Waitrose? Right, exactly. Right? Let's be honest. Is there that much difference between Waitrose milk and Sainsbury's milk? Is there, Leah? But it makes you feel better,
No,
doesn't it? You feel better shopping at Waitrose, don't you?
sometimes.
It's okay. It's okay to admit it. We need to embrace these because these subtle bits of humanity, of our insecurities, our identities, how we perceive ourselves, etc., if that makes sense, they all go into making successful businesses. Almost everything we do, even in deep tech, even in science, is positional in some way, shape, or form.
But are you ever gonna make that explicit? Are you ever gonna say that's the value of my product, or are you gonna somehow sublime transfer that? Sorry.
This reminds me of a great lecture I used to do in the 500 program of how to show off without showing off. Whereas in America, it depends on the culture and the market, right? Pascal, where are you in the world?
I'm based in the UK, but I'm from Germany.
Okay, fine. So both false modesty countries, basically. Yeah, fundamentally. And so it depends.
I don't agree to that. Sorry.
Sorry, Shri?
I don't agree to Germany being called a false modesty country. I don't know why you say that.
It's my experience.
We have
Maybe
an experience for you to say that.
I've had plenty, so I don't. It's my experience. They're not very good at. It's like it's never overt. Look at me, Caroline, do you want to say something? Caroline, join in. The Coffee Boutique. Yes, exactly. There's a positionality piece. Yes, exactly. So you make it seem more. Yeah, it's the value that is not from. It's the positional value where the value is possessed by others, not anyone else. So we're going to go for a break now, but this break, unfortunately, involves a bit of work. So I'm going to share in here a lovely editable PowerPoint deck. What would be lovely is if you could copy the 2 slides, put your name on the top of each, and then what I need you to do over this break, have a cup of tea and coffee, and then I want you to start having a go at the functional and the value prop. Does that make sense?
Question.
Who's asking a question?
Some of us have a company, some of us don't yet, or never will. What do we put in the company name? What kind of business are we talking about?
Make something up in related to your field. If not, I'm going to give you all a demo company. Do you want me to give you a fake company?
For some, that might be helpful.
Yeah, that could be helpful.
Okay, so for the life sciences, we are gonna come up with the dog obedient. So you found a new way of using you found a way of using CRISPR to create a new type of therapeutic that changes the behavior of dogs.
Sounds great. I'm in.
How much?
Talk about a ballistic machine gun.
That's investors for you.
Okay. And then in the physical sciences, physical natural sciences, let me think of an example. We have we found you've got a new way of you've got a new material. You found a new way of getting more rare earth materials out of recycling batteries. So you can find the electronic components. Sorry, right? So you have a mechanic that can do that, if that makes sense. You've got a machine that will extract 100% instead of 80%.
Excellent. So to clarify, Salim, that this means that if you're already working on something and you feel like using that as an example, you're free to do that. If you haven't thought of anything yet, you can use one of these two examples.
How much time?
15 minutes. Because that's the exact time I also need to get a coffee.
15?
Right.
Do we have 15?
We don't have 15, so let's do 10. Let's do 10 minutes, guys. It's going to be a quick...
We go till 4:30, don't we?
No.
Go till 4.
Till 4 p.m.
You put 4:30 in my diary. Who put 4:30 in my diary?
Ah, too bad. 10 minutes, guys. Off you go.
Bye.
Okay. Meet at 25 past.
Yeah, 3:25.
Those that have been keeping the cameras off, I mean, a lot of nose pickers. What are you hiding?
I mean, you just want to be free about it, like, you know, hello.
Exactly,
hi.
that's good.
Ale, D, are you both going to Web Summit?
Good question.
Oh.
Would love to. We don't know yet.
Why?
We're in the middle of.
Wait, the only valuable day of Web Summit is that first day, really.
Oh, the Venture Day.
Yeah, I mean, because it's smaller, so you actually get to meet people.
Got it.
I mean, the rest is madness. I think you need a recovery post Web Summit.
Yeah, I don't know. I just hide in the investor's pen, or I find somebody vaguely famous to drag me into the speaker's area. I won't be. Sadly, it's first year I've been going without a speaker's badge, so it's going to be like. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Also, just Lisbon's fun.
You're going, yeah? You're confirmed.
Yep, confirmed, booked. Have my flights sorted.
It's great that they're having it this year.
40,000 people. I mean, what is COVID? But it's interesting. The flights from London are super cheap and super available, which gives me a feeling there aren't that many people from Britain going. So it looks like it's a very continental land grab.
Where are you staying?
The Moxie Hotel.
Oh yeah.
I like my hotels cheap and by Marriott.
Yeah.
I have ambassador status, so before that disappears, I want to use it before it goes to pieces.
Yeah.
Right.
I hope everyone can access the slides.
You can?
I know, I hope everyone can, because you are like the only person who uses OneDrive. Who uses OneDrive?
I have a question on the homework. What do you have the third slide that says customer? You want us to name the customers?
Oh, don't worry about
example.
So copy and paste. Apologies. We're just doing the functional value prop right now. At the next session with Debbie, we're going to do the fill in the customer blanks.
Okay.
So just do the functional. By all means, if you can, have a go at the second piece now. But the main thing to get now is the first piece. Daisy's going to talk you through the second piece.
Okay, perfect.
Right, I need coffee. I only have 6 minutes.
Yeah. Me too.
What do we do when we are done? Just share screens, or should I send it to someone? Hello?
I'd say keep it with you right now, and
Okay.
and we'll tell you what happens next.
Wow, sono sicuro che agogni l'abisso. Bene, vuoi sprecare?
What's going on? That's Italian for you guys.
What are you subconsciously trying to sell us, Ale?
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to get something up. Dedicated to Zandos. So since you posted the Zandos, I've not been sleeping.
Shall I load it or shall I present it if necessary from my screen?
Yeah, if you keep it on your screen for now, and we'll have instructions in about 2 minutes.
What kind of summit you were referring to? You were discussing event.
The Web Summit event
Web Summit,
takes place in Lisbon every year, or it hasn't taken place in 2 years now, I think, because of COVID. But it's a large tech conference. I'd say more focused on regular tech rather than science or deep tech. But it's a huge event and huge parties, 4 or 5 days. And as Wilbe, we have been going there every year with the entire team. We get a house, an Airbnb, and we bring some of our founders as well. So it tends to be like a retreat as well. But I'm not sure we're going to be able to do it this year.
So you haven't bought these tickets now? That's what you mean?
So say again.
Have you decided if you are going there or not?
Yeah, it's pretty sure that we won't be going because
I see.
Also, it's quite a general summit, so it's not very. In fact, if anything, there's very little science and deep tech, so it's not as useful.
I have the same dilemma because my team won these tickets for travel grant there, but it's 2 weeks to Web Summit and we don't have any information about that, and still it looks like we have to arrange the hotels and everything like this, so it's very stressful, and still I haven't decided if we are going there or not. So I will be very glad if we could meet there, so it will be a very nice motivation for me to reconsider my decision.
You certainly meet some interesting people, maybe not very relevant. So
yes, exactly. That's the point. But
there is no equivalent event for science and science innovation yet. So watch this space. We may share something in due course or not.
Web Summit is great if you want free t-shirts. And that's been my experience. Or if you organize a load of investor meetings for people you wouldn't otherwise meet, it takes a lot of preparation to actually get the value out of Web Summit, I think. Unless you just want to go and eat nice food and be somewhere warmer in October or November. Cool. We've gone past the 25 past. Do we want to, just for 5 minutes, I know there are a couple of people who wanted to present theirs so far. Do we have some volunteers? Maybe some names or some people we haven't heard from yet. There's a few lurking in the bottom. Otherwise, we might pick them. Okay, I'm going to just start picking on people. Tanvir.
There you go. It's like a school.
Yes.
Do you have, in fact, would you like to share your screen and show us what you've got, if you've got anything?
I don't have anything.
You don't have anything. See, this is why we.
I've been actually working on this HW thingy.
I also volunteer, but I don't know how to share a screen if I'm elected to share.
Okay, no, but for this exercise of the functional and value prop, you haven't got anything yet, do you?
No.
Okay. Who else can we pick on?
I talk about the dogs.
There you go. Gangu, do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, let's see.
Yes. Let me see. Where is it now?
This is always very nerve-wracking doing it in front of a group of people, but I know you're all academics, so you all understand the growth mindset. Let's put something out there, let's work on it, and let's make it better.
Can you see the slides? I'm not sure whether it's shared or not. Can you see the slides from my computer?
I can't see it yet.
Is this one?
Okay, yeah.
There we go. Great.
So it's so fast. I'm not an expert in this CRISPR area. Just I heard about something. So I would say it's a company called CRISPR. Right?
Nice.
So the functional preposition, that's a little scientific. We can use this technique to edit the genes of the puppy. In that case, we can correct some genetic mutations. Because some dogs, maybe you like it, but it's born with the disease you cannot be cured. In that case, we can correct the genetic mutations. And also we can silence some oncogenes that's improperly activated. This is especially for the cancer. In cancer, some genes get activated. And then we can also enhance the expression of some good genes. Maybe some genes are good, but they're not strongly expressed. We can enhance that. And next one, we can knock out some virus receptors so that the dogs will not be infected by virus. What is value preposition? You have to say, in that case, first when you get a dog, I get some friends who get a first puppy. I think for the first year, they need to spend loads of the money for these vaccinations, maybe thousands of pounds. In that case, I said, well, you don't need to spend any money on this dog vaccines. You can save that money. And also, some dogs, maybe they accompanied you for many years, but it's got a disease and it cannot be cured. And I would say, okay, if it's CRISPR, this can save your dog from this lethal disease like a cancer. The last one feels a little scary to me. I don't know whether the customers want that. It can design a puppy with your favorite eyes, furs, or color.
Great, I love it. And I'm gonna call Salim out. Salim is getting a new dog and just went to visit this dog yesterday and today maybe. And he did, I'm gonna, this is a group of people we've never met before, but I'm gonna open up and share your personal experiences. Salim said to me earlier, this dog was very licky, which is, maybe you could design a puppy that is less slobbery on you, if that's something that you want.
Well, that's where the idea came from. I mean, he's a little cavapuchon, so he's just got the most cutest doe eyes, and he's lovely. He just licks all the time, and I'm not sure I want a super licky dog. Given I'm spending a fair bit of money on a pre-trained dog, it's Anyway, I digress.
But Gangwoo, I think this was great. I think you got the point of there's a functional thing that you're doing, and then there's the value to the end user. So that's really great. And I look forward to seeing more of these in the office hours next week, hopefully.
Round of applause! Yay!
Thanks very much.
Well done, gang.
You would actually win a donut if we were in the same room, but alas, we're not, and we probably won't be in the same room for a long time. But
cool. Okay, so I'm just going to press on in the interest of time. A one-liner. Does anyone know what a one-liner is? This is a one sentence to summarize what you do. We all have to say these sort of things about the research we're doing, about what course we're studying, all this sort of stuff. And it's notoriously hard.
Built in an online dating profile on something like Tinder. This is your Tinder bio.
Exactly. I haven't done that. I don't think I've ever done that. But if you're anything like...
How old are your kids?
So it is a pickup line.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have Grindr, but in Grindr there is only one word.
Really? I mean, hey.
You make it a really long word. Are you in Germany? Can you just make it one long word of loads of words joined together? That's how German works.
Where are we going with this?
Okay, so
what's wrong, Leslie?
Okay, Salim,
yeah.
I'm shoving donuts in my mouth. You talk.
Okay, so if you're anything like me or like the current generation of people, you are either on some sort of social media where, I don't know, TikTok is a great example, where you watch a video for like literally half a second and you decide whether you want to continue to watch it or not, and you will flick up. Does anyone do that? Am I the only one? No one does this? No one just, okay, I'm getting a few nods. You understand that we have a very low attention span in the world today. And so that's why getting a snappy one-liner is extremely important. There are other reasons specific to scientists, and you will know this being scientists. You've met lots of other scientists who sometimes do a one-liner very well and sometimes do it very badly. But the first thing that we want to get out of this one-liner is comprehension. So we want people to understand what you're doing. I've seen now hundreds of pitch decks. I know all investors do. You've all met hundreds, maybe thousands of other scientists. And there's often times where you just don't understand what someone's talking about. And they use incredibly overwhelming words, and you're just like, okay, I don't want to talk to this person because I just don't get it. I'm not going to be able to understand it at all. So that's the number one thing I would say we want to do. And the second one, like the indecent proposition, is we want to excite people. We want to get people excited about the idea. It's got some future legs on it. Maybe there's other applications in the future. We don't want it to be really boring about what you do. We want it to have some pull to it. And then the third one is, I don't know, we haven't spoken about Theranos that much, but I like it to be something that's reasonable. Yes, shoot for the stars, shoot for Mars or other solar systems, but also bring it back to reality. What can you actually achieve in the short term, at least? Yes, Erin.
I have a question. So my question is that should the line describe the value or the function?
It's a great question. We're going to come to this in just a second. So I've got a framework because you guys are scientists. You'll understand this. So the opposite is don't overwhelm people with scary language. Don't scare them away by gene therapies that will change your dog. I don't know, maybe. And no BS.
Desi, just conscious that Dennis also had a question.
Oh, yes. Is that on the chat or in the hands up?
Chat.
Okay.
It's in the chat, but maybe you can say yourself, Dennis, if you fancy.
Yeah, basically something as the title that we are usually giving to our research papers, but with inside both function and value is the same thing.
So very much for this exercise of getting a one-liner, what I would love you guys to come out at the end of this week, or at least the end of this program, is to have something that you can say to anyone, whether it's investors, colleagues, family, that makes them understand what you're doing, firstly, gives them a little bit of excitement and is reasonable. And then you can follow up with, okay, how do you do this? What is the technical, give me the technical detail. You guys all have this information, but this should come as a follow-up conversation. So in the minds of an investor, it's the first line is to get them to understand what you do so they can ask you the questions where they have concerns or interest about.
So this could be, this could be speaking to an, oh, sorry.
And then the thing is, and then the really good one-liners are ones where you say it and different people come up with it elicits a logical question. So it's very sort of, in an ideal world, you're going down a Socratic sort of teaching method about your stuff. So you're like, I do this. And you want them to ask questions like, oh, how does that work? Oh, ooh. And by the nature of their questioning to your one-liner, that actually tells you whether you're actually having a worthwhile conversation, because there's a myth here. In the startup world, everybody has to understand what you do. Everybody you speak to has to love what you do. You just need one or two. You just need the right people to get it when you say it. But that said, you've got to give them enough to go on so that they come up with wouldn't it be exciting if we did, could it do that? Or wait, do you mean this? That's when you know it's really, really working.
Leslie,
Yes.
from an audience perspective, you mentioned the investor point of view. Is it fair also to imagine that this is a line that would work also, I don't know, with members of the press? You said mothers and sisters and uncles, but members of the press or potential business team members that could join?
Essentially, yes. Like what we've seen, what I've seen over hundreds of startups now, is if you have a good one-liner, you can talk to anyone. And within the first sentence, people were like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I understand. Now I'm interested about this specific area. And then they'll ask you questions. The outcome of a good one-liner is you tell it to people and people sort of smile and nod, and then they ask you a question about it. They want to know more. And yes, that can be investors, it can be family, it can be journalists as well. Obviously, if you're in your lab and you're talking with people who have your PhDs in the thing that you're doing, then you might want to be more specific. But this is just the first one-liner for most people that you meet. Dee, did you want to add something?
There was a good question in the chat from Yvette.
Oh, yeah.
If your client is not the final customer, but any supplier, do you also need to make it comprehensive for the final customer, or is it the job of the supplier? So this is a really great question. So when you talk to investors, what typically happens if you have a good meeting is they will go home and tell their husbands or wives or family or their partners about what you do. And if you give them a good one-liner that they can repeat to those people and get them excited, then you've won half the battle of getting money. If you make it really complicated and they say, yeah, I don't quite know what they do, but the guy's really smart and he said these really long words, so like he's probably got something, but I don't know what it is, then that's obviously much less valuable.
And that's also because investing is a positional activity.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
People want to show off, oh, I've got the latest thing that can change dogs' genes, so you get like the best dog.
Oh God, well that, or like, you know, like my current brag, which is, yeah, no, I've been big on NFTs. This NFT blockchain trading game I invested in 3 years ago is now worth 3.3 billion. I did the seed round. The ability to talk about that stuff is super cool. Or I invested in this company that's helped 1 million people in America give up smoking and has just raised a 255 million valuation. For me, as an investor, there's some positionality with that. And now, even before the investment, it's cool to say, yeah, wouldn't it be cool if there was a game that people could play to actually earn a living from, that sort of stuff. So yeah, anyway.
Cool.
Sounds like then a good one-liner is actionable. So it allows you to have a follow-up to the conversation rather than be a conversation blocker almost.
Exactly.
Or you're not relevant, you don't understand, you know, there's nothing to talk about henceforth.
Yes. And doing this, okay, so we have a framework. I'm going to show you this framework right now, which is this. Has anyone ever played Cards Against Humanity? You sort of fill in the blank, you put down your card. That's exactly how I see this. We have sections that are underlined here that you just fill in the gap. Now, getting this right is actually quite difficult and does take quite a lot of time, which is what the office hours are for. And yeah, like even from the last batch, we were discussing some of them earlier, and there's still ways to make them better and make them much more punchy. So don't worry, just get something done, and then we'll go from there. Done is better than perfect. So I'm going to go through all of these things and explain in a bit more detail what they should entail. So the first one, well, firstly, company name. You guys might not have a company name yet, so you can come up with something random or Acme, or I don't know, whatever you like, that's fine. But the product type should be something really specific because I want to know, I want to understand what you do. So the traditional ones in tech startups are like mobile apps, software as a service, marketplace. What you guys as academics probably have are, I don't know, a drug platform technology, patented hardware, genetic analysis, something like this. Being really specific really helps to just get to that comprehension stage. The decks that we've seen so many of have words like big data, we're a platform, we're disruptive, AI, machine, like all of these buzzwords that don't really mean anything. Now, some of you might actually have some of this as like your patented technology. In fact, we have a specific one about platform, and it took me a long time to realize this, but platform is a technical name for basically a new way to make a drug. Is that right? So I would say don't use platform, because the investor that you're speaking to or the family member that you're speaking to might not know that. Just say a new way to make drugs or something like this, if your company is actually a drug platform technology. Does that make sense? I'm seeing nods and thumbs up. Great. Okay, so the next one is the customer. And again, I really want you guys to be specific. The reason I want you to be specific is it will just make me understand what you're doing so much quicker and not waste my time to just guess what you do. So some examples from previous batches: people with type 2 diabetes, pancreatic cancer patients, middle-aged health conscious families, this sort of stuff. Please do not put "you are for everyone." You might be in the long run, but probably where you are right now, you're going to be going after a first target audience. So think who they might be that you're going to go after with your idea once you get it out of research phase. Cool. Okay. The next one is the value proposition. This is kind of the problem that you're solving, the actual value that you're solving. And I want you guys, the reason we did the first exercise of the functional and the value is to get this out. Because if you as an investor can understand the value, you can immediately understand the applications, not just now, but in the future. So some examples: get rid of insects, check for leaks, eliminate annoying paper filings, this sort of stuff. Something, again, specific to the value that you're creating. What we've seen many times in the past is people just explain or even list out a bunch of features. And I don't know, you kind of get bored when someone's listing all the things that their technology can do or could potentially do in the future. So have it something realistic that's solving a real value. Yes, is there a question from the group?
There was, but I think you're actually answering it as you're going through.
I hope so. Okay, and the last one is your secret sauce. So you are all research, academic type people, I believe, in this group. So your secret sauce, the reason why you guys are special is probably you're doing some PhD research. You might be the first ever lab that's done this. You might be, like some other examples that we've seen, proprietary technology, using like some examples from last batch, using native bees. This was kind of fun. Automated systems, first to market. Does this make sense? This is your secret sauce. This is what makes you stand out from the next person.
Will you get into the details with the whole point of saying it's secret sauce?
I mean, you obviously don't give them your patent written out, and well, actually a patent would be fine, but you don't give them the formula, but you say you have this secret sauce.
I mean, if to say it's my proprietary technology, would be a standard, wouldn't it be a very generalized line to say? I mean, it's pretty convenient to say that because, I definitely don't want to give off anything. But then I think it's always a give and take, because we've had that issue with some of our stuff where they actually want to know some specifics of it. And it's just like, I mean, where we as scientists maybe find it difficult is to find a way out on how you can still be fine on legally on the patent side, but still give them out enough details that they're interested in what you do. That's a very thin line, and it's pretty much a challenge to try to explain how it works.
For sure, definitely in trying to explain, and we can talk about this in much more detail of how much you give away into the actual technical workings. But for this one-liner, for this exercise at least, saying that, hey, look, I've been doing a PhD for, I don't know, some people end up doing them for 10 years, or they do research for a very long time. Like that gives you special source. And one thing that I've seen in BSF batches specifically is you guys don't realize how unique and special you are. Like there are very few people, I'm talking tens of people probably in the world that have your expertise in what you've been studying and researching. And that's hugely valuable. I see a few faces like, no, there's loads of people. Yes, loads of people in your circles because you talk to them and you share research papers and all of this sort of stuff. If you go outside of your lab, there's very few, or outside of your industry, there's very few people who are going to be doing what you've done.
Just to add to that, because previously we discussed about the one-liner, and we want the one-liner, if I understood it right, to be as general as possible that every layman can understand it. If I went and told it to my wife, who's a doctor who has nothing to do with what I'm doing, she should be able to she should be excited with what I'm doing and not say, okay, yeah, just another stuff. But here, when we go on to this, we're getting more into the details. And then the question is, this is something that you tailor according to the investors that you're speaking to, because they would be more, in the know-how.
So again, this is just a part for the one-liner. This is, I don't know, 3-5 words that you can have in your mind ready to go, so that when you talk to anyone, you can say, and the reason why I'm special, the reason why we're going to succeed is because I've done this, or we're the first to market, or like whatever your special source is. Yes, Erin.
Meanwhile, I made this pickup line, so I can share maybe.
Wow, you've already done it. Okay,
yep,
go ahead.
I just did it. So let's see if I can share. I cannot start sharing screen. Okay.
Okay, hold on 1 second. We're going to do a live demo, and I'm going to call on you first. So let me just finish this really quickly. Yeah, buzzwords like AI, machine learning, analytics, automation. Big data might work if you have specific data points that no one else has. If you've got publicly accessible data points, okay, maybe if you've run machine learning on it for several years, that might be your secret source. But something that makes you stand out beyond other people. And yes, Salim, Ale, Dee, you can all probably attest to this, how many investment decks you've seen which have some of these words in. There are some favorites in there, like revolutionize. I don't think we actually have in this one. We want to democratize X, or we are the Uber of Y. Like all of this stuff is fluff. It doesn't really get you anywhere. So what I like to see is if you're to the point and I can understand you, that's much more valuable than these fluffy words. And this is actually, well, Salim says he plays this as a drinking game where if they say enough things and you get a line or a bingo line, then you sort of win the prize and drink.
And the prize of not getting invested in. And I end up, yes, I will be doing this at Web Summit, judging some pitch competitions. So if any of you in Lisbon, yeah, I may not be as sober after pitch competition as when I started. Anyway, moving swiftly on.
I'm going to give just one example from a previous batch that started with their one-liner. I'll read it out. Thermosites will acquire, sanitize, and interpret satellite thermal and stress remote sensing data to provide insights on physical properties of industrial infrastructures. Does anybody know what this means? Can anyone tell me what they do? Either you've all fallen asleep, or it is incredibly
I see a lot of
complex.
squinting.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to understand the heat signature of the infrastructure that you have, and then able to determine what stress the infrastructure is under, and if it's something that's beyond a particular critical point.
That still to me sounds as complex.
It's a bit afraid. I would say if I will be a company who is ordering service, sanitizing service that acquires, it's a bit afraid-ing. I don't want that my sanitizer would acquire anything.
Instead of going on site to visit some property, they just look at the satellite picture and tell you all the information you need. That sounds like a
nice. Yes, that is a good summary of this. Cool. So one thing I would say about this one-liner is I very much doubt you could reproduce that same one-liner multiple times to different people unless you have a very good memory. And you're probably going to confuse people when you tell them. So just using our framework, this is what happened. So Thermosites creates software to process satellite images for gas pipeline owners to detect spills without inspections. Is that clearer? Yes, I'm seeing lots of nodding. Okay, hopefully you've got it. Like this framework for pretty much every business that I've seen so far is just makes things much clearer. To get to this is quite difficult because you'll want to throw in loads of long words about specific stuff that you're doing that no one else can do. But again, remember, comprehension is the goal. So on that note, Aaron, are you ready to share yours? I will stop sharing my screen.
And Desi, just a time check. We have just about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just change now one word.
Would you like to read it? Maybe reading it is even better because that's more like a real world situation.
Yeah, wait. Yes,
So you
I
deleted the word that you wrote?
No, I can share it as well. Let me see where is it.
Yeah, the share screen, green button in the middle below this image.
Or just read it out because that's more like a real world example of when you meet people.
I need
press Alt S. Hold Alt plus S.
Oh my God, you're putting so much pressure now. Wait. So share a screen.
This first state is a bit clunky, Aaron.
Is it? It's sharing. It's not sharing. I don't know. Okay. Yeah.
Sharing.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So I wasn't able to change the word as I start sharing the screen, but I will read it. Silklytics creates immunochromatography on chip analysis to help people who has to take monitor drugs. We save lives with our unique combined technologies on one chip.
Very nice. Can someone, and I'm going to pick on someone who I don't think spoken yet. So Lynn, can I ask you to tell me what Erin does or what Silklytics does?
So I think she making the system on the chips, and that one can track or can like monitor the people who use drug, and to see maybe the concentration of high drug people taking, or to save life, because when they track, then they will know it's in the limit, high the permission of the, I don't know, drug is not a permit, but and I what I'm thinking a drug here is mean like medicine, or what drug you mean in here? I mean about the heroin or something, that kind of things or not? And the about the secret is self life, of course, that's self life, and the combination technique on one chip. It can be unique if like it's novel or nobody done before. So that's what I'm thinking from this.
Okay, clearly thank you very much, Lynn. Clearly there's quite a few questions that come up, which is good. We want this to evoke some questions and get people interested in kind of more details. There's still definitely quite a bit of comprehension of like, who's this really for? Like, how exactly does it work? I'm not saying the one-liner has to solve all of these, but I think we can definitely, in office hours, help to simplify this. Another point I want to make before I do go is use this group, like share this one-liner throughout the next few days with other people in the group if you're doing quick one-on-one chats, and see if they can tell you back what you do, and there might be some areas which are a bit confusing. Cool. Thank you very much, Erin.
You're welcome.
Well done.
Nice. In this deck, which I think Devika's gonna share around afterwards, there are some more examples. Story Terrace makes books for successful business owners to record their life stories using a global network of vetted journalists. Like that's something that's in my back pocket, ready to say, or slight variations. Similarly with my current business, we have some more examples in this deck, which you can look through afterwards. But your homework is essentially to come up with this yourself, and ideally book office hours with me and or Salim, and we can help go through this and hopefully narrow it down and make something really compelling. There's also in this deck, you will see some alumni of some very good and maybe less good one-liners, and you can judge for yourself what makes a good one-liner and if you can take some lessons back to yourself. Yeah, this one was one that we had to cut down and make a lot more simple.
So where do we put our stuff? Just on the OneDrive that Salim shared, and just leave it there online?
So if you take a copy of that slide,
it's not a OneDrive, right?
You know what we did for the first homework? What I'll do is I'll create a template for this one. You already have it, the 2 slides, but I'll create the template and put it on our Google Drive. So all you guys have to do is just copy paste those 2 slides and add it to the files you've already started creating with your homework one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. That means whatever we have written here online now on OneDrive, we just store it on our systems now.
Exactly. Just store it on your Google, on the file that you use for homework one.
Jesus. I mean,
what is that? Oh, it's a unicorn.
It's a little unicorn. So that concludes it. We can do questions now. I know we're kind of short on time. Our email addresses are there. Salim, I put your email up there. I didn't ask you for permission, but anyway, we're on the Slack as well. And I think Davika will send around our Calendly to book us for half an hour where we can help go through both the value, functional, prop, and the one-liner.
Excellent. So guys, we will be recapping the homework at the end of the session, which is in close to 30 minutes or a bit more than that. And you'll have all the links on Slack to book the time with Desi and Salim. In the meantime, did you enjoy this session today with these guys? Yeah, big nods, big thumbs up. Well done.
You've got to ask them after we've gone, you see, like when we're still here.
Well done. In the meantime, we lost Salim. He has been...
You haven't lost me. I was just like, I was just trying to stop interrupting Desi, because I always interrupt him unnecessarily. So it's often easier for me just to be quiet.
You haven't been eaten alive by the pet yet.
I mean, it's still at the farm, so it's still in training. Got another 4 weeks before I get little Fluffy.
Is it a Welsh farm or?
No, it's in England. It's up near Crewe. It's a little fluffy animal and it's adorable. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking about my dog so much. Everybody's like, what is wrong with you? You're a grown man. I'm like, I know. But yeah, definitely get the homework done. Nothing good happens to people who do nothing. And we can't help you. So there's another couple of rules. If you book an office hour and the homework isn't done, we terminate it immediately. It's just because if you've at least had a go, at least you've started it, then that's fair enough. But yes. Ale, exactly, full on Terminator anger. Raw. But yeah, no, because this is absolutely no bloody point is the honest answer. Because we're there to go through that. Car, hello. What are you doing here?
I just came to warn everyone about your bad humor, but I am too late.
Oh dear, my nightmares became true.
Very good, guys. So I guess this is a good segue.
Well, we don't want to take away from these two. So let them go through. Have an amazing time, guys. Do the homework. We'll send around the links. Also, chuck them in on Slack, and I guarantee you, one of the 4 of us will comment in and stuff, and be mean. And so that's a great thing.
And so can the good ones. So can the entire class. Drop your one-liners on Slack. It'd be good to get feedback from everyone.
Oh, 100%. And if you don't understand it, then if the whole room doesn't understand it, then there's something wrong.
Excellent. So you guys hopefully can stick around if you can for this last piece of today, which is going to be an incredible panel talk. But this is beautiful, guys, because we're going full circle, as in joining us, the new face on the call right now that you see in the middle, for me at least, is Cart. And Cart has been a superstar fellow for our class number 2, I believe, this time last year, and how things have gone by since then. So Cart has, not only she was part of the inaugural class with Desi and Salim, and has built an incredible relationship with the two of them outside of the class, through the one-on-ones. But then after the class, she went on to further explore her research until she got to a discovery point. That discovery converted into something that it was very defensible, and that patent now has been submitted, and she's set up to save the world. We talked a lot about vaccines, and that is one of the applications of the technology. She has founded her own company with her colleagues within the lab, and she's now entertaining conversations with everyone, including commercial partners, investors, and we are proud. And we're proud to be able to say that we have been on this journey with Cart, this journey of venture building. So today, Cart will be hosting the panel for today, which is with two great founders who are further down the road, if you like, of venture building and launching a company. And Cart will introduce us to the two of them.
Well, thank you, Ale. I always think this session is a little funny because there's like this long introduction to the person who is actually going to do the introduction, because obviously this session is absolutely not about me, but there is two amazing founders that have been willing to join the group and share their story. The first of them is Kaja Vasik. Kaja, can you wave to people? I don't know. I'm assuming.
Hi, everybody.
So Kaja is obviously going to tell you more about what she does herself. I don't want to take it away from her, but she's, I call her the variant hunter. She's looking for these exciting variants in the vast pool of undiscovered human diversity to enable better discovery of medicines. And then on the other hand, we have also Martin, and I met Martin last time in the course. He was presenting already then. And so that's why I know that Martin's company, Arcturus, that he's going to tell you about, I believe it started because he went through his training and understood the drug discovery was very inefficient and could be done much better. And instead of just moaning about it, he went about and started fixing it and has done a really great job at it. Is Martin with us? Maybe he can say hi too.
Hi, very nice to see you.
Perfect. So, so these are the two speakers today, although I hope it will be much more of a question and answer session. One of the things before I let the floor to them is that I know that when I joined the session last year, it was quite unclear, this question, like, okay, I'm a scientist and I have this idea and I want to found a company, but what should my role there be? Should I really be a CEO, or should I be a CSO or a COO? And so today you have an excellent example of both. So Kaja has been a CSO in two of her companies, and Martin is definitely the CEO and fulfilling that role in his company. And maybe I would urge you guys to poke in and ask them why and how they have come to that conclusion. But without further ado, I think the next thing we could do is that each of you gives us a few minutes of an intro of what you are doing and how you got to where you are. And then I'm relying on all of you to ask a lot of questions, otherwise I will do.
Who should go first?
I mean, please, Kaja.
Okay, great. Well, it's a pleasure to meet everybody. So just in terms of my background, I got a PhD in molecular biology at Cold Spring Harbor Lab, a very small graduate program. We're only 7 students. So it was a fantastic experience to really get to know all the professors and really select well when it came to deciding what you're going to do for your PhD. And I was very lucky to end up in a lab that was focusing a lot on different sequencing technologies. So we were beta testing all the sequencers that were like really coming to the market. So I remember where Solexa turned into Illumina, and we're testing the Oxford Nanopore, we are testing PacBio sequencer. So that really made me realize how powerful sequencing technology can be in understanding very basic biology. And at that time, I was focusing on sequencing kind of everything but humans, everything that species that you didn't require consent from to sequence their genomes, like flatworms and fruit flies. But after that, I really wanted to apply what I've learned to human genetics. So I moved to the New York Genome Center, did my postdoctoral training there with Joe Pickrell, who was a human statistical geneticist, a professor at the Genome Center and Columbia University. And within a year of my training, Joe and I started our first company. Joe left his position as a PI too. He became the CEO, I became the CSO. The company is called GenCove. It's actually raising its Series B of funding right now. And I worked at GenCove for about 3 years. And what GenCove did is we developed a better approach to build genomic databases that is actually based on whole genome sequencing rather than on genotyping arrays, but we scaled the whole genome sequencing down to very small coverage. So we called it low-pass whole genome sequencing, and then developed a lab process and a series of analytical methods to allow people to interact with this type of data that's not very commonly used. So that was GenCove. GenCove made a big push towards the agriculture market, where there's a lot of species where you don't have genotyping array tools available. And after that, I wasn't that excited about this. I decided I don't want to stop at like a platform company. What I really want to do is I want to understand the findings and take the next step and validate them and see how can they be applicable. So started Variant Bio. 3 years after starting GenCove, I found a replacement for my position at GenCove. I'm also a CSO at Variant Bio. I started it together with one of my best friends from grad school, from the class of 7, Stefan Castell, who was actually finishing his postdoctoral training at Columbia University. He worked with Tuli Lapalainen. He's a functional geneticist. So in terms of like kind of the scientific content of Variant Bio, we definitely had a very, very strong background. And what Variant does, just very briefly, because I've been talking for a while, is Variant focuses on working with populations around the world that have genetic architecture that's conducive to rare variants rising to high frequency. So groups that live in isolation, that went through some type of genetic bottleneck. And we also are focusing on groups that have a phenotype, that are epidemiological outlier for some phenotype of relevance, and that can be related to adaptation, that can be related to different disease epidemiology, because we're hoping that what we can discover is single genetic variants of strong effects that rose to high frequencies within those populations. And then we can use those findings to validate them and to potentially identify novel therapeutic and diagnostic targets. Yeah, that's it.
I guess let's listen to Martin first, and then we'll open up the floor to questions. If you already have questions to Kaya in your head, like I do, so you can put them down on the chat, and so that will create like a little bit of queue, and then I'll call you out when it's time for your question. But yeah, Martin, the floor is yours.
Brilliant, very nice to meet you. And as was introduced, I was already here last year, so I'm here kind of again, after I was kind of received a very friendly invitation from Devika and her team. So I'm very pleased to be here today. In terms of brief background, I'm not a scientist originally. I qualified as a medical doctor, worked as an oncologist, and then I moved to the UK, did my PhD or my DPhil at Oxford. And following that, co-founded the company that I've been leading ever since. In terms of motivation and background, I think it was very important to notice that when I arrived in the labs with no previous lab experience, I was quite surprised to find how scientists actually spend their time. Because I had this rather romantic kind of image in my head that scientists would primarily think through projects, read, understand, and devise new hypotheses. And instead, it looks like scientists spend 6, 7, 8 hours every day manually pipetting small amounts of liquids, when I thought that is maybe not necessarily the best way to spend your time if you're an intelligent, highly qualified scientist who spent years understanding cell biology, molecular biology, disease biology, etc. And at the very same time, it also became clear that apart from being an inconvenience, there is also another dimension in this rather antiquated work mode, which is the data quality that we currently have within discovery is overall relatively poor. Reproducibility, reliability, and robustness of data are extremely limited, and the current estimates are that between 80 and 90% of all published research data is not reproducible. Those are kind of the numbers that pharma companies arrived at when they try to reproduce landmark studies, and they only succeeded in a very small number of cases. So in other words, the starting motivation was very much a question about what is the best work mode that scientists could possibly work in, and what is the need and requirement to work on data and data quality as a determining factor in how good our research can possibly be. So taking these two things together, we then started Arcturus as a company that has built a robotic laboratory that can conduct a very broad range of assays, from cell biology to molecular biology to biochemistry, in an automated fashion, so that our scientists and our partner scientists in academic centers, biotech companies, pharma companies, instead of having to do all of the experiments by hand, can rely on our infrastructure and on our system to design projects and then to run projects and receive these high quality, highly structured data sets to make decisions based on which target to pursue, which hits, which leads, which candidate, etc. So it's very much about replacing the manual aspect of research with something where scientists are far more in the driver's seat and drive research forward intellectually. So that's basically what we do with the company. And I'm very curious kind of what your ideas are and what the ventures are you might be working on.
Thank you, Martin. I see no questions yet. Oh, yes, Rainis. Always can rely on you. All right, go first.
I guess one of the problems that there's a couple problems that the company. Oh, let me just read the question so that you don't all have to read it. So the question for me, sorry, the question for me is, what is the overreaching problem for your company solves, and when did you identify the problem regarding your technical platform? So I guess the problem that I'm trying to solve is the limited amount of targets for drug development. It is an issue. There's a lot of disease areas that we call, areas of high unmet medical need, where we as researchers don't really have we don't really have an idea of how to make the next therapeutics, because we don't know what to target. We just don't know enough about the disease biology to be able to decide this is a good targetable, element of the pathway for that specific disease. Some are really well understood, but some aren't. So for instance, if you think kidney disease, like anything related to that, like progressing kidney disease, kind of your only options are at some point dialysis, and when it comes to that, it's kidney transplant. So there's really no therapeutics that are there to solve this problem. So from what the company was trying to do is really try to find better ways to identify more potential targets for developing therapeutics, and at the same time, since we're doing genomic research, also be able to maybe identify not every gene that is highly associated with disease development or disease progression can be targetable. It might not even point to a targetable pathway, but it potentially also can be used for diagnostics. So it could be used as a diagnostic market, if you have this specific genetic variant, that might mean that you're likely to develop kidney failure 10 years earlier than somebody without that variant. So that is also important information for individuals to have. So this is really the problem that we were trying to solve, if that makes sense.
That makes very well sense. Thank you. But I mean, how do you protect your revenue stream? I mean, I understand that actually your value is your data, the targets. Yep. So you actually sell the targets, or you sell the platform to screen the targets.
No, what we do is we do research to identify novel targets, and then we follow up in the lab and validate them and develop therapeutics. So the goal for the company is we are right now a company of, I think, 22 people. We've existed for 3 years, and we have our first findings. So we have our first exciting potential targets. Just hired somebody who ran a drug development group at GSK. He's building our own drug development group internally. Our investors are very very solidly convinced that we don't want to be selling targets. We just want to be pushing them internally to develop therapeutics as far as we can. So which means that our company is not going to be generating revenue for the next foreseeable future, probably 10 years. Like we will have to be one of those companies that raises like subsequent funding rounds. So we are finalizing our Series B funding that will allow us to build out a lab for 50 people right now. And then probably, within like the next 3 years, we'll have to get to